Remember the Nintendo Wii? Yeah, that's actually what they call it, but it was very revolutionary when it first came out, but looking at it now, it's like a baby's toy. You probably know who said that before me, but anyway, the Nintendo Wii. Boy, can I tell you tales about this console.
I remember being in school at the release day of the Wii. Me and a good friend of mine decided to rush out of the building as soon as the bell rang.
Just to get the Nintendo Wii, our PE teacher even said they have never seen anyone run that fast ever. And keep in mind, we were nerds, so they were all pretty shocked.
Anyway, I tried to get the Wii at the local GameStop, or EB Games I believe it was called at that time. But they didn't have it, so I decided to look at the local toy store, since no one interested in video games or above the age of 12 would even dare to be caught dead in there. And to my friend's surprise, they had a bunch of it left.
So I got the Wii with Wii Sports and Twilight Princess, but we actually prefer playing Wii Sports for some odd reason. I know, weird, but enough background story and sentimental bullcrap. We're here to talk about a certain concept. We're here to talk about when a gaming company creates a decently received success and then the bandwagon begins. I think we can all picture this. But we are here to talk about a certain video game that came in way too late, was on the wrong console, and more or less felt half-baked. This is Soul Calibur.
And you might think Soul Calibur, that okay to good fighting game that more or less is on its way to damnation with the more and more pressing microtransactions.
Yeah, no. We're going to talk about Soul Calibur Legends. And no, I don't mean the Legend of Soul Calibur. I mean the video game conveniently named Soul Calibur Legends.
Soul Calibur Legends was a game released in 2007 on the Nintendo Wii, and it is safe to say that they looked at the success that was Mortal Kombat Shaolin Monks, another game I enjoyed playing with my friends actually. Although neither of us were any good at the fatalities. But never mind that, Shaolin Monks came out in 2005, and I am pretty sure that Legends began its production circle about there, since they more or less used half-baked assets from Soul Calibur 3.
But that is another story. Anyway, I first got introduced to Soul Calibur by playing the second game on the GameCube, and yes, I only bought this game because I saw Link on the cover, so you can probably imagine my disappointment when the third game didn't get a Wii release, because that meant no Link, and thus I didn't buy it.
Not even to this day do I own Soul Calibur 3 because I was so bummed out that the game didn't include my favorite character. I however bought 4 and 5 for whatever reason. Maybe because I could sort of recreate Link as a character in the creation tool.
Well, nevertheless, one day when I was browsing GameStop shelves, I just happened to find Soul Calibur Legends, and two things came to mind. First off, Link has to be in this game, it's on the Wii. And second, sweet, I get to pretend to swing a sword? This is going to be great! Well, anyway, I think it's about time we start the damn game.
It starts out with another reincarnation of the story of Soul Edge and Calibur, where we see Secret introduced in the third game trying to find and achieve Soul Edge.
So it's a prequel to the second one, or is it the first one, making this Soul Calibur 0? Anyway.
After some text and still images, it was in production for 2 years only, so let that slide. Secret finds Soul Edge and the game begins.
I've been waiting for you.
This voice, is it you?
So, as you might have guessed, you use the Wii Remote and Nunchuck to play. You use the analog stick to move, B to jump, the C button to block, and C is used for soul attacks as they call it. And you swing the Wii Remote to attack. Different movements for different attacks. Button 1 and 2 doesn't seem to be used at all. Anyway, the controls aren't bad per se, I mean I can beat these spooky scary skeletons rather easy. Then we battle Cervantes and the story begins with Soul Edge being sort of reborn and unleashing various monsters named evils into our world. There's the Sultan named Barbaros who's a freaking giant, well, giant. And the Masked Emperor who seems cool enough I guess.
And then there is Ishka, the Emperor's jester, even though he's actually never been seen doing anything remotely fun in the video game. Maybe it's bad translation?
Iska, present yourself.
Yes, my liege.
Iska shall go with you.
Oh yeah, speaking of translation, Nintendo had this thing where they wouldn't allow original languages in any of their games. Or maybe it was the companies that didn't want to license the actors. I think that whole Japanese actors licensing is sort of a mess, really. But for whatever reason, you are stuck with half-assed English voice actors.
And no, I'm not saying about the other games, they were pretty good. No, Legends just had bad voice actors.
Well, after some battles, we're introduced to Ivy, who is an interesting character.
Interesting as in, she's almost naked and she got really big armor pieces. Man, that claw always freaked me out.
So we are now either stuck with Siegfried and his decent attacks, or watching Ivy and that censored ass.
Since I'm pretty sure I'm not even allowed to show pictures of her here.
Well, we are trying to find an ancient inventor to help defeat Fafnir the dragon, who's called Guardian since they guard pieces of Soul Edge.
And that ancient inventor is none other than Leonardo da Vinci.
Well, after a small battle of a bunch of enemies, we finally find Leonardo, not the turtle, and he is more than willing to help us defeat the Guardian. So we are now at the scene where we are about to battle the second boss in the game, where we are introduced to the first dig move in this game.
Look, Siegfried. There's an old sword stuck here.
Oh cool! A new sword so I don't have to rely on Soul Edge? Awesome! Exactly how do I get it?
Do I punch the thing? No. Uppercut? No. Do I need to put Soul Edge next to it? No.
Honestly, I got no idea how to get the sword. And the first time I played this, I was so afraid that if I didn't get it now, I would never ever get it, because once you beat a stage, you can't go back.
So I decided to fight Fafnir instead, having to use Soul Edge. The fight is decently easy, although the dragon got some rather hard attacks to miss. Plus the camera is really your enemy. You can target an enemy like Zelda, but it is 10 times worse. You see, every time you move the analog stick backwards, your character decides to walk backwards, cutting a huge chunk out of your mobility.
Meaning, if you're not careful, you'll get hit by everything.
Apart from that, some attacks just doesn't seem to hit the target at all, giving you a huge disadvantage against this enemy. Oh yeah, I forgot to mention this, didn't I? Once you hit it enough, it flies away, forcing you to wait for it to fly to the correct spot to hit it again. Do this 3 times and it lands again.
There! Finally beat it. Now on to the next stage.
Which usually is to protect the Empire from the giant Barbaros, meaning you basically have to beat up some enemies until you win.
So you probably get the gist by now. Beat up some enemies, do some really simple puzzles, and then beat a boss.
Oh yeah, before we move on to the boss, there's a few things to look at, like the puzzles, which usually consist of blowing out the torch or cut this pillar or rope.
Lamp oil. Rope?
Yeah, and that's basically it.
And another thing we can look at is that once we get some more characters, you can change in between them by pressing C and A, or some other combination. I think there's like 3 different ones actually. And once you do, the characters has a little speech like, "I will crush you, prepare yourself," or
Now come! Now come! Now come!
That. Seriously, didn't anyone listen to this and say, yeah, probably not the best idea to give this swimsuit wearing half-naked seducing character. But on the other hand, I am pretty glad it's not Siegfried's dialogue. That would have been truly terrifying.
Anyway, moving on, it seems that Leonardo needs some more help. Meaning, we just have to attack some enemies and ends up finding Astaroth.
Which, honestly, I wouldn't recommend unless you like looking at ball gymmen and speedos. Astaroth's character was really not meant for this type of camera.
We stumble across Ishka's former teacher of alchemy, who is also creating automatons or human dolls like Astaroth.
Exterminate.
Oh yeah, remember Soul Calibur 2 with Astaroth speeding hard? Yeah, they removed that.
Tell him.
Anyway, we are now in Egypt, and here we rescue Sophitia, which I must admit is just quick as all hell.
Which you might already have guessed, but if you know how the characters play in Soul Calibur 2 and 3, You probably already know who to pick in this one.
Forgot to mention that every time you beat a stage, you're getting a score B, A, and S being the best like many Japanese games. Once you accumulate enough points, you get a rank, and upon certain ranks, you get a new weapon. This time we got the Trident for Ivy. Whether this is cosmetic or they actually deal more damage, I couldn't figure out at all. So Sophidia tells us she sealed the Guardian in to let the expedition crew escape, but she cannot undo the seal. Meaning we have to get back to Leonardo, then the Empire's in trouble again, and we finally can beat the Guardian, which is a sarcophagus.
Fitting enough since we are in an Egyptian tomb.
It's simple enough, avoid attacks and hit it while it's open. Oh yeah, I forgot to mention, most bosses has this can't hit me barrier, but once they attack, they can be hit.
It's a stupid game design so you don't blast through every single boss you meet, and it gives them an excuse not to make engaging boss battles.
After this, we're tracking down some bandits since they apparently got a shot too, I don't know anymore. We fight and befriend Mitsurugi, who was my main in Soul Calibur 4 since there was no link. We then travel to Japan to find the next shard. Here the boss is a brute called Geki and this girl called Maki.
Geki, retreat!
They are only in Soul Calibur Legends, unless they changed their character design so much that they are unrecognizable.
Here, Taki comes in to save us apparently, even though we beat their asses in the actual fight.
Taki.
But some games want to make you feel weak without putting any effort into it. So Taki tells us that the sacred beads, probably not what you're thinking, has been stolen and we need to retrieve them in order to get the shard. So we fight the bandits once again and we manage to capture this lady Barbara, who seems odd in my opinion.
And I know it's just her sleeve, but at first glance, it looks like she got 3 boobs like that girl from Total Recall. But never mind that now, we're moving on.
We managed to find the last bead in the Himalayan hideout, but before we can confront the Guardians Maki and Geki, the Emperor needs to be saved again.
And you probably didn't know this, but these stages has a timer, a big ass timer, but imagine playing at hard difficulty, then the timer is probably not big enough.
Finally beat that, moving on to the battle with the Guardians. Rather annoying, honestly, they have this "you can't hit me until I say so" barrier. And it also functions like, oh, you hit me enough now, time to put up the barrier. And the attacks are rather random. So we beat the annoying Guardians, get a small cutscene, and the Emperor is a woman.
Oh yeah, that just showed it like, hey, he's a woman. Surprise! They never give a good explanation as of why. It just suddenly occurred to them that the Masked Emperor is a woman now. Making it an empress, but moving on.
Now we get to fight the last unlockable character, Lloyd from Tales of Symphonia. Once we beat him, we can play as him against this dragon. This game loves dragons, by the way. They started out as a simple boss to then become regular boring enemies. Funny story, I prefer using Lloyd since he uses dual-wielded swords and that is just cool. So after a lot of stages, we are at the next boss, which is Cervantes again.
Yeah, he was the first boss we fought, and here he is again.
So we defeat Cervantes, fully recover Soul Edge, and I think this is the least impressive version I've seen yet. Of course, it is a matter of opinion, but whatever.
We don't have time to talk about appearance of swords, people. Barbaros is attacking.
And it is that shitty boss battle where you stand on a platform while avoiding the various attacks of the giant. The one that comes to mind is the Egg Golem in Sonic Adventure 2, also a crappy boss battle, but for slightly different reasons. While we manages to withstand the shittiness of these overly lazy boss battle designs, the Empress gets Soul Calibur and surprise, she's evil.
Is that not true, Siegfried?
Great! All of that for nothing! And I mean nothing.
Because it actually shows that all the bosses has been resurrected as well as clarified to be humans, whose desire was of evil origin, thus turning them into monsters.
And you know what that means. Painfully backtracking boss rush scenario where you have to beat all the bosses again just to beat the final boss.
And honestly, not much have changed apart from the damage they do and some slightly longer you can't hit me time barrier cycles. Meaning, it's longer and if you so happens to be defeated,
Get out of my way!
You go back to the beginning of the stage. That's about 6 to 10 minutes of backtracking, people. It's not the worst in the world. I mean, I've seen worse, but still, once you're defeated by a boss, You're eager, ready to go again, but no, you're not allowed.
Not bad game design, just annoying. Anyway, we managed to beat the bosses again. Honestly, the only difference I spotted was the sarcophagus is now completely broken and the mummy is revealed. That and Cervantes is back once again.
Oh yeah, we have to beat Cervantes once again. That's like 3 times in this video game. And there's maybe 5-6 bosses in total, and those you just have to beat over and over? That's not fun.
Seriously, there's like 15 characters in Soul Calibur 2, couldn't they use some more of those? So finally we are sealing off Soul Edge to get the Requiem, but to our displeasure, Nightmare is born. And we have to beat him with that sealed sword.
Oh, so that is how you get this sword. Man, what a cock tease. Hey, you want that sword, huh? You want that sword that's on the front of the cover? Well, too bad. Complete 85% of the game first, you idiot.
So we finally get to the last boss battle, which doesn't have a bunch of enemies at the start, so we can try as many times as we want.
Fuck! Seriously, who came up with this? This is so damn cheap!
This shows that Soul Calibur or any other fighting game needs to be tweaked heavily to make an action-adventure game. Seriously, the enemy, the Empress, jumps around like there's no tomorrow. She got insanely long distance attacks and you move slow as hell, and when you finally get close, whoop, back to square one. Oh, and she also got homing missile spheres.
That and some rather sick combos.
You It took me quite some tries to beat her, and also don't tell me I should just block. First of all, most of her attacks are unblockable. Second, the guard break technique, which is performed by blocking and shaking the nunchuck around. I mean, good luck with that, that's just insanely difficult to get precisely. There, we finally beat her, and our reward is the realization that she's just an automaton created by Ishka, who, surprise, turns out to be evil.
Iska!
And they all lived happily ever after. Wait, what? Ishka's evil now? Huh. What a twist.
What a twist!
Seriously, there is another boss battle, and also, you really can't put the game down and try again later, since if you do, you're probably going to beat the Empress again, since there is no save in between. Oh yeah, I forgot to mention that. It only saves once you beat a level.
Okay. Ishka now has wings, and some rather annoying abilities that require some spot-on precision from your side.
Try to do that with the Reeve remote. It looks fine on paper, but in reality, it just can't be done. Well, here's the trick I used. I found an old controller without the Remotion Plus. Booted that up, tried to beat him with that, then I realized you can't really move the Reeve remote above the sensor bar, if you put it on top of the TV, of course.
But in the heat of the battle, you really can't help yourself. Every hit you take is one giant step closer to doing it all over.
Well, I finally managed to beat Ishka, he dies, and the Nightmare is revealed to have returned.
What is true power?
And that was Soul Calibur Legends. Once you beat the game, however, you're free to play any stage in any order, plus you get some cool 2-player stages to play.
Oh yeah, did I forget to mention it's actually a 2-player video game? I probably did, didn't I? But it's not really worth it unless you want to hit each other in your head with a vertical slash. Not recommended.
Anyway, the game feels rushed. Really rushed. Like Namco thought that this action-adventure model was going to be the next big thing, and they just rushed this product out as fast as possible. Which the credits actually shows. I think only a handful of people worked on this, at least not nearly as many as there usually is compared to the other games. There's like 3 people for character design. The controls feels like they started off with a regular controller in mind, but someone quickly told them that the Wii was selling better than PS2. So they had to implement the control scheme onto the Wii remote. But then again, the game would probably be too easy with a regular controller where you got full control of everything. The story isn't nearly as good as the other titles in the series, but you can recognize it as a Soul Calibur title. The bosses are a joke, either they are too easy or they are just so unfair. Honestly, there's only one thing worse than easy bosses, and that is unfair bosses. Good thing this game doesn't have any other kind. Seriously, the barrier bullshit is just put in there to make the game feel longer. With bigger boss battles, since if they didn't have that, they had to include AI, which wasn't something they intended at all, I tell you. Also, if there were no barrier, all bosses would have been beat within seconds. Voice actors are doing a poor job, and I actually remember the voice actors in Soul Calibur 2 and the other ones being okay for dubs. In all honesty, don't play this game if you want to play fighting games as an action-adventure game. Go with Mortal Kombat Shaolin Monks. It is way better.
There! That's that video game. I'm the Angrynator, terminating bad video games by chopping them up with this sword.